Freeze! Hands up! At 10:47 a.m. in Seattle, police sirens scream as officers point guns directly at Dante Reynolds, shielding elderly Hattie Warren. This injustice happens only because his skin color and Harbor Island wore clothes look threatening next to the rich kids who bullied the lady. Dante, a 38-year-old single dad, only came to buy his daughter a cake after a hard day of work. Now he must fight to protect his honor and prove his innocence against a biased legal system. Huge obstacles hit him. A sudden gym closure, a $15 for 100 debt demanded early, and dirty framing tricks from a greedy rival. Who will stand up for this lonely man before it is too late? To understand this moment, we must go back 6 hours, long before the guns came out. It was 5:03 a.m. at Harbor Island. Rain fell in cold, thin needles over the docks. Dante Reynolds gripped a steel crate with both hands. His shoulders burned. His gloves smelled like wet rope and diesel. A crane groaned somewhere behind him. Metal chains clinked in the wind. Diesel fumes mixed with the sharp smell of salt water. Gulls screamed overhead, fighting over scraps near a trash bin. Dante was 38 years old. He had a square jaw and tired eyes. His hands were rough from 11 years on these docks. His boots sank slightly into the wet gravel with every step. Cold rain slid down the back of his collar. "You should head home soon," said Marcus, his co-worker. "Isn't today Maya's birthday?" Dante nodded. He wiped rain from his face. 8 years old today, he said, growing up fast. He thought about his daughter's smile. It kept him standing through the cold and the ache in his back. By 3:11 p.m., Dante stood outside Lincoln Elementary School. Rain tapped softly on his jacket. The doors opened. Kids ran out in bright raincoats. Maya spotted her father and sprinted straight to him. Her yellow raincoat sleeve was torn at the seam. She didn't care. She wrapped both arms around his waist. "Daddy, guess what misses?" Carson said today. Maya's voice cracked with excitement. "What did she say, baby girl?" "She said if I keep practicing my jabs, I could box in the Olympics one day." Rain dripped from the school's metal awning, tapping against the pavement in a slow, steady rhythm. Other parents in clean coats waited under umbrellas nearby. A few glanced at Dante's stained work jacket, then looked away. Dante didn't notice. His whole world in that moment was the small girl gripping his waist. He laughed, a low, warm sound. He lifted her onto his shoulders like she weighed nothing. "Just like your grandfather," he said. "He held that title belt for 6 years. I want to win it back," Maya whispered. "For him, and for you." Dante's throat tightened. He said nothing. He just held her legs a little tighter. At 4:32 p.m., they reached Reynolds Boxing Club. The old brick building sat quiet on a narrow street. Inside, a punching bag swung on a rusty chain. Water dripped into a blue plastic bucket near the back wall. The smell of old leather and sweat still lived in every corner. It was the smell of Dante's whole childhood. A radiator hissed softly near the ring, fighting a losing battle against the cold seeping through the walls. Maya ran straight for her gloves, hanging on a small hook her father had built just for her. Jim, the club's longtime trainer, waited by the front desk. His face looked tight. "Got something for you," Jim said. He handed Dante a red envelope from the bank. Dante opened it. His eyes moved fast across the page. His jaw locked hard. The letter said the gym owed $15 for 132.20. Payment was due in exactly 14 days. Dante's fingers curled into a fist. The paper crinkled loudly in his grip. He turned to Maya, who was lacing up her small gloves nearby. He forced his voice to stay soft. "Everything's going to be fine," he told her. "I promise." Maya smiled and nodded, trusting him completely. She had no idea what that letter meant. As Dante folded the notice into his pocket, he noticed a man across the street. The stranger wore a black suit. He was taking photos of the gym with a small camera. The man in the suit lowered his camera, glanced both ways, then slid quickly into a black sedan. Dante frowned. Why would anyone care about a run-down boxing gym in a poor neighborhood? He didn't know it yet, But that photo was the first thread of a much bigger plan. Dante shook off the thought. He had a birthday to celebrate, and worry could wait until tomorrow. He helped Maya zip up her raincoat, then locked the gym's heavy front door behind them. The street lamps flickered on one by one as they walked, casting long shadows across the wet sidewalk. Maya hummed a tune from school, swinging her father's hand back and forth with each step. By 5:34 p.m., Dante and Maya reached Westlake Center. Warm bakery smells drifted from corner shop. Inside the bakery, Dante counted crumpled dollar bills one by one. The strawberry cake cost $32.50. A few shoppers in expensive coats glanced at his stained work jacket. Their eyes lingered too long. One woman wrinkled her nose slightly. Dante noticed, but said nothing. He kept counting his money. The bakery smelled like warm sugar and melted butter. A small bell above the door chimed each time someone entered. Maya pressed her face close to the glass case, watching the baker add one more strawberry to the cake. He paid, and the cashier handed Maya the pink box. Her eyes lit up like small stars. "Can we eat it right now?" Maya asked, bouncing on her toes. "Let's get home first," Dante said, smiling. "Then it's all yours." They stepped outside into the plaza. Rain had softened into a light mist. That's when they heard laughing. Loud, mocking laughter echoing off the stone walls. 3 young men in designer jackets circled an elderly woman near a corner. Her coat was gray and worn thin. One of them, tall and smirking, snatched something from her trembling hand. "Her inhaler. Please," the old woman gasped. "I need that. I can't breathe." Rain dripped steadily off the stone awning above them, tapping a nervous rhythm against the pavement. The young man, Julian, twirled the inhaler between his fingers like a toy. His friends filmed everything on their phones. "Relax, Grandma," Julian sneered. "This'll get us 1,000,000 views." The woman's lips turned pale blue at the edges. Her knees buckled. She started sliding toward the wet stone steps. Nobody around moved. People stared at their phones or looked away entirely. Dante's chest went tight and hot. He handed the pink cake box to Maya without a word. "Stand right here," he told her firmly. "Don't move." He crossed the plaza in long, heavy strides. Rain hit his shoulders like small stones. He stepped between Julian and the old woman, using his broad frame like a wall. His voice came out low and steady. "Give her back the inhaler. Right now." Julian laughed nervously, glancing at his friend's phone cameras. "Or what? You gonna hit me, big man?" Dante didn't answer. He just stared, unmoving, his dark eyes locked on Julian's face. The plaza went quiet except for the softness of rain, and one phone still recording. A vein pulsed at Dante's temple. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed low and controlled. Julian swung a wild fist toward Dante's jaw. Dante shifted his head an inch to the side. He caught Julian's wrist midair and twisted it gently but firmly. The inhaler dropped straight into Dante's palm. Julian yelped in pain, dropping to one knee. His friend stopped filming and backed away fast. Dante knelt beside the old woman. He pressed the inhaler softly into her shaking hand. "Breathe slow," he said gently. "You're safe now." Her fingers trembled around the small inhaler, cold and stiff from the wet afternoon air. She took 2 shaky puffs. Color slowly returned to her lips. Her chest rose and fell more evenly. "Thank you," she whispered, staring up at him like he was something out of a dream. A small crowd had gathered now, murmuring and holding up their own phones toward the scene. Maya stood frozen by the bakery entrance, clutching the pink cake box against her chest. Then sirens wailed from down the street. Blue and red lights bounced off the wet pavement. An officer named Miller stepped out of his cruiser, hand already resting on his holster. Julian pointed at Dante immediately. "He attacked me. Out of nowhere. Ask anyone." Officer Miller's eyes swept over Dante's stained work jacket and dark skin. His jaw tightened with suspicion. "On your knees," Miller barked, his gun rising slightly. Rain slid down Miller's rain jacket in thin streaks. Nearby bystanders lifted their phones instead of stepping in. Dante's pulse pounded in his ears. Every part of him screamed to obey, but his spine stayed straight. "I won't kneel," he said quietly. "I haven't done anything wrong." The old woman, still catching her breath, stepped forward with surprising strength in her voice. "This man saved my life," she said sharply. "Lower that weapon, officer, or I will make a call you won't enjoy." Miller hesitated. Something about her tone made him pause. He slowly lowered his gun, jaw clenched tight. He shot Dante one last hard look before walking back to his cruiser, radio crackling at his hip. The old woman turned to Dante, her eyes glassy with gratitude. "My name is Hattie Warren," she said. She reached in her purse and pulled out a checkbook, pen already uncapped. "Please," she said, "let me repay you properly." Dante gently pushed her hand back down. "I helped you because it was right," he said. "Not for money." He glanced toward Maya, still holding the cake box tightly. "My daughter's watching. I want her to see the right thing." Hattie watched him walk away, her wrinkled hand pressed to her chest. Something about him stayed with her. She stood in the drizzle a moment longer, watching father and daughter disappear around the corner. Then she pulled a small notebook from her purse and wrote down the name of his gym. On the walk home, Maya finally opened the pink box and broke off a small corner of cake. She offered the first bite to her father, insisting he try it before she took her own. Dante smiled and ate it slowly, letting the sweetness push away the ache still sitting in his chest. Back at the gym, that evening, another visitor waited. A lawyer named Marcus Cole, representing a company called Thorn Dynamics. He held a thick folder. Inside was a demand to clear the land for a new parking structure. Dante stared at the paper, exhaustion pressing on his chest like a heavy stone. First the debt, now this. His father's gym, built from nothing, was slipping through his fingers fast. That night, long after Maya fell asleep, Dante sat alone under a flickering light bulb. He wrapped his aching knuckles slowly, staring at old photos of his father on the wall. A soft knock came at the door. He looked up, surprised to see Hattie Warren standing there. She still wore her plain gray coat, hiding whatever life she truly lived outside these walls. "I hope it's all right," she said. "I wanted to see the place that raised a man like you." Dante offered her the old wooden bench near the ring. She sat down slowly, watching him wrap his hands. The single light bulb buzzed faintly above them. Somewhere outside, a truck rumbled down the wet street. Hattie glanced around at the peeling paint and the faded photographs lining the walls. "Your father built something real here," she said quietly. "I can feel it in these walls." "This world judges the coat before it judges the heart," Hattie said softly. "But real pride isn't refusing help. Real pride," she continued, "is knowing when to use an opportunity to protect what you love." Dante listened quietly, saying nothing, but her words settled somewhere deep inside his chest. Before leaving, Hattie pulled a small wooden keychain from her purse. It was shaped like a tiny boxing glove. "This belonged to my late husband," she said, placing it in Maya's small hand as she slept. "For luck." Maya stirred slightly in her sleep, clutching the tiny wooden glove against her chest. Hattie smiled softly at the sight, then turned her attention back to Dante with quiet curiosity. She asked Dante about his dream of a community fitness program. He explained it, and she wrote every word down. He had no idea why a stranger cared so much, but something told him this wasn't the end of it. The next morning, a black car pulled up outside the gym. A well-dressed assistant stepped out with an envelope. Inside was a formal invitation from Nova Core Tech, a major technology company downtown. They wanted Reynolds Boxing Club to design a fitness program for their dock workers. The starting offer was $18,000. Jim read over his shoulder, letting out a low whistle. $18,000, he said. "That could save us." Dante's hands trembled slightly as he read it. He had never set foot inside a place like that, but he thought of the leaking roof. He thought of Maya's hopeful eyes. He decided to go. He pulled out his late father's old gray suit jacket. It was tight in the shoulders, but neatly pressed. At 9:15 a.m., Dante walked into Novacore's glass tower downtown. Its curved windows shimmered silver against the gray sky. The lobby smelled like fresh coffee and expensive perfume. Marble floors clicked sharply under polished shoes. Dante's work boots felt heavy and loud against the polished stone. He tugged at his father's tight jacket sleeve. A wall of screens behind the front desk glowed, with Novacore's logo pulsing slowly in soft blue light. As he stepped inside, a woman in a sharp red blazer turned and looked him over. Her name was Victoria Thorne, owner of a rival company, and her smile did not reach her eyes. "Well," she said coolly, "I didn't realize Novacore hired from the docks now." Dante said nothing. He simply nodded and walked past her toward the boardroom. Inside, several executives sat around a long table. Victoria followed, arms crossed, watching closely. Dante began presenting his plan. His voice was calm, though his heart pounded beneath his father's old jacket. He spoke about stretching routines for dock workers, about preventing the back injuries he'd seen for 11 years. Victoria interrupted twice, mocking his lack of a business degree, calling him a street guy playing office. Her voice was sharp and dripping with false sweetness. A few executives shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs. Victoria smirked, clearly enjoying the discomfort spreading across Dante's face. Then the doors opened, and Tristan Warren walked in. He was Novacore's young, sharp-eyed CEO. Tristan listened carefully to every word Dante said. His face slowly shifted from doubt to genuine interest. "This is exactly the kind of program our workers need," Tristan said, extending his hand. "Let's sign this today." The other executives began nodding along, suddenly warming to the plan now that Tristan approved. Even Victoria forced a thin, tight smile, though her eyes stayed cold across the table. Dante shook his hand firmly, relief flooding through his tired chest. He had no idea Tristan was Hattie's son. Hattie had kept that secret on purpose. She wanted to see if Dante's character would shine without her help. After the meeting, a friendly assistant named Gemma approached Dante with a warm smile. "Let me show you around," she said sweetly. "And don't worry about the paperwork. I'll handle it for you." Dante thanked her, unaware of the quiet danger hiding behind her friendly tone. Gemma led him past glass offices and a wall covered in framed magazine articles about Novacore's rise. She smelled like sharp floral perfume, and her heels clicked quickly against the marble floor. "You did great in there," she said, smiling wide. "Tristan doesn't impress easily." Later, passing by a restroom hallway, Dante overheard a sharp whisper through the half-closed door. It was Victoria's voice. "Take care of that street thief before tonight's launch event," she hissed to Gemma. Dante froze. His stomach dropped. Something dangerous was being planned, and he was the target. He backed away quietly, his mind racing through every polite smile Gemma had given him that day. He almost turned back to warn someone, but he had no proof, only a whispered threat. He decided to stay alert and watch his surroundings closely for the rest of the evening. That evening, Novacore's Grand Hall glowed, with deep blue light for their new AI product launch. Reporters filled the room, cameras flashing like small bursts of lightning. Dante sat near the front as an honored guest. Waiters moved through the crowd, with trays of small appetizers. Soft electronic music hummed beneath the noise of conversation. Dante adjusted his father's jacket collar, still slightly stiff across his broad shoulders. The device inside the case pulsed with a faint green light, humming softly beneath its glass cover. Victoria watched from across the room, her eyes fixed on a glowing security device locked inside a glass case. It held Novacore's most valuable encrypted chip, worth millions of dollars to the company. During a break, the lights suddenly flickered and died for exactly 10 seconds. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones lit up like tiny stars across the darkroom. Someone laughed nervously near the bar. In that darkness, Gemma bumped into Dante, spilling red wine across his gray jacket. "I'm so sorry," she said, dabbing at his sleeve with a napkin. Her fingers moved fast and precise. She slipped the stolen chip quietly into his jacket pocket, hidden beneath the fake apology. Dante felt his pocket grow slightly heavier. Before he could think about it, a piercing alarm ripped through the hall. Red emergency lights spun across the ceiling. Security guards rushed to seal every exit at once. Victoria stepped onto the small stage, her voice booming through the microphone with false urgency. "Our core security device has been stolen," she announced, "and the thief is the dock worker we let in tonight." Every camera in the room swung toward Dante. His heart slammed hard against his ribs. Officer Miller, the same officer from Westlake Center, pushed through the crowd with two other officers. "Hands where I can see them," Miller ordered, yanking Dante's jacket open roughly in front of everyone. His hand plunged into the pocket and pulled out the glowing chip. The crowd gasped loudly. Whispers spread through the hall like poison. Of course it was him. Should have known better. A woman near the stage shook her head slowly, muttering something about people not belonging in places like this. Dante Sillon. The room felt like it was tilting slightly beneath his feet. Tristan stared at Dante, his face pale with shock and disappointment. Dante's throat closed up completely. His mind flashed to Maya's proud smile that morning, and his chest ached with a sharp, sudden pain. He wasn't scared of jail. He was terrified of Maya seeing her father's name dragged through the mud. As handcuffs clicked open near his wrists, Dante caught a glimpse of Victoria's small, satisfied smile. "This is the exact moment from our hook." 10:47 in the morning. Guns raised, innocence in question. Then, a sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Stop right there." The whole hall went silent, except for the low hum of the emergency lights, still spinning red. Every head turned. Hattie Warren stepped out from a private elevator, no longer wearing her plain gray coat. She wore a shimmering silk gown, flanked by two quiet bodyguards. Tristan's jaw dropped instantly. "Mom," he said, stunned. "What are you doing here?" Hattie walked forward, chin high, pointing directly at Dante. Her voice rang clear across the silent hall. "This man saved my life outside Westlake Center," she announced. "He refused every dollar I offered him. A man with that kind of honor," she continued, "is not a thief. Look deeper before you judge." Dante stepped forward calmly, facing Tristan with steady eyes. "Your building uses LiDAR scanning technology, correct?" "Let the technology speak the truth," Dante said. "Pull the footage from the blackout." Tristan blinked, then turned sharply to his security team. "Pull the LiDAR scan. Now." A technician near the wall typed quickly, his fingers shaking slightly under the pressure of the moment. The whole room waited in tense silence, every eye fixed on the enormous blank screen above the stage. Victoria's confident expression cracked instantly. Her eyes darted toward the nearest exit. She motioned quickly to Gemma, but two security guards blocked the back hallway before either could move. Moments later, a massive screen lit up the hall with a glowing blue three-dimensional replay. The scan showed everything with perfect clarity. Gemma slipping the chip into Dante's pocket in the dark. And behind her, Victoria's small, sharp nod, directing the entire theft from the shadows. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Every camera spun away, from Dante and locked onto Victoria's frozen face. Her cheeks drained of color. Her hands trembled slightly as she searched for an exit that no longer existed. Miller's face flushed deep red as he realized his earlier mistake in front of the entire room. He avoided Dante's eyes as he snapped the handcuffs closed around Victoria's wrists instead. Officer Miller, red-faced, redirected his handcuffs toward the real culprits. Victoria and Gemma were led away in silence. Victoria screamed protests as reporters shouted questions, flashing cameras capturing her unraveling composure. Her red blazer looked wrinkled now, nothing like the sharp, confident image she wore just an hour earlier. Gemma walked beside her in silence, staring down at the marble floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Tristan walked slowly toward Dante, his head bowed low in front of the entire room. "I owe you the deepest apology," Tristan said quietly. "Well, I don't know how to fully repay." Dante simply nodded, removing his stained jacket. Relief washed over his tired shoulders like warm water. The next morning, Novacor announced a new contract worth 10 times the original offer. They also paid off the gym's entire $15 for $132.20 debt in a single wire transfer. Reporters crowded the small gym entrance. That morning, cameras clicking as Tristan read the announcement aloud. Jim stood in the back, arms crossed, grinning wider than anyone had seen in years. More than that, they bought the surrounding land and donated $500,000 to rebuild the gym completely. It would become a free community center for kids, just like Maya, right there on the same street. When the doors of the boardroom opened, Maya ran straight into her father's open arms. Dante dropped to his knees, holding her tightly, tears sliding down his weathered cheeks. "I kept my promise," he whispered into her hair. "I didn't steal. I protected our family's name." Maya sobbed with pride, wrapping her small arms around his neck as tightly as she could. The room burst into applause. Even hardened reporters wiped their eyes, moved by the quiet dignity before them. Hattie stepped forward, gently removing the small wooden boxing glove from Maya's necklace. She pinned it carefully onto Dante's jacket collar instead, smiling warmly at him. "Now," she said softly, "you're the real champion this city needed to see." 6 months passed. Rain still fell steadily over Seattle, but Reynolds Boxing Club looked completely different now. The leaking roof was gone, replaced with bright lights, and fresh red punching bags lined along the walls. Dozens of neighborhood kids trained there for free, their laughter echoing through the once quiet building. The old radiator was gone now, replaced with a quiet heating system that never hissed or clanked. Jim stood near the ring, calling out corrections in his gravelly voice, a proud smile on his face. Hattie and Tristan visited often, no longer hiding behind security or wealth, just as ordinary friends. Hattie always wore her old gray coat on these visits, laughing that some habits were simply too comfortable to break. Tristan had taken up boxing lessons himself, though Jim teased him constantly about his weak left jab. They brought a strawberry cake for Maya's half-birthday, a small tradition they'd started together. Tristan shook Dante's hand with genuine respect, no trace of doubt left in his eyes. Dante stood near the ring in a simple black shirt, watching Maya throw quick, confident punches into the air. Salt air drifted faintly through an open window, carrying the familiar smell of the docks he still loved. He looked out toward Harbor Island, where waves still crashed steadily against the old dock stones. Maya climbed through the ropes and hugged him tight around the waist, sweat and all. "Did I do good, Daddy?" she asked, breathless and grinning ear to ear. "You did great, baby girl," he said. "Just like a grandfather, just like a champion." His hands were still rough. His life was still simple, but his heart finally felt at peace. A person's worth was never about money or the color of their skin. It lived in the quiet strength to stay honest, no matter how hard the storm became.